Remember that dirtbag who leaked to the media that Donald Trump was asking him to find votes in the Georgia election? And of course, this is just something that happens in every election. There are votes that either don't get tallied, don't get counted incorrectly. Certainly not what Donald Trump was asking was for them to pull ballots out from under a table and count them in the middle of the night after lying to everybody about a water main bursting. That's what Democrats did in Georgia, and they were allowed to do that in Georgia by a guy named Brad Raffensperger. Brad Raffensperger is the Secretary of State of Georgia, infamous for his rigging of the 2020 election. He allowed Democrats to steal the state. He's a complete and utter scumbag, a total rhino, the kind of weakling that trots around as Republican in a red state, but in any other universe, he'd be a Democrat, and he is a Democrat, and he's just wearing Republicanism as a skin suit. Anyway, he was running for governor, and he lost in a landslide last night. So just chalk up another victory for President Trump. Raffensperger helped criminals steal the 2020 Georgia election and ignored voters' calls for accountability, and now he has been held accountable. Another Trump enemy falls. Brad Raffensperger loses Georgia primary in a landslide. MAGA billionaire Rick Jackson and Trump-endorsed Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones advanced to runoff. Raffensperger didn't even make it. This is like really funny. Great dye job too, dude. Like seriously, get all that gray hair from Donald Trump. Absolutely wrecking ball. Here he is, Donald Trump posting the scorecard from last night. 6-0, 10-0, 9-0 in Georgia. The Trump endorsement stronger than ever. Trump endorsement wins something like 95% of the time. Trump has a 95% win rate. And boy, I got to tell you, Brad Raffensperger does not have a good win rate. Brad Raffensperger got 15% of the vote, which is pretty embarrassing for a guy who's been in high public office for the better part of the last decade. Brad Raffensperger, you'd assume, would do much better, but the people of Georgia hate him because he allowed for the steal in 2020. Raffensperger does not advance, much like Bill Cassidy. It's totally humiliating, by the way, these guys. You know, Cassidy didn't advance in Louisiana. They have runoff elections. There's going to be a runoff for the LA mayoral race. That's what we need Spencer Pratt to get to. We don't need him to win on the first ballot. We just need him to get to the runoff. When you can't even get to the runoff, that means your career is over. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger became the latest enemy of President Donald Trump. Republican primary loss. And he lost to two other dudes. I don't really know them that well. I don't know Burt Jones or Rick Jackson at all. I'm not from Georgia. I live in a state that borders Georgia, and I know the Georgia Republican Party is very peculiar, right? They're not MAGA like at all. And they've been kind of annoying, frankly, to the president and annoying to work with. Like, for instance, they could have redistricted. Georgia has a ton of Democrat seats, and they could have gone really hard and redistricted. They're going to wait until 2028. Fine, I'll take it. But could have gone harder in. Could have fought for redistricting before. There are tons of members of their, super majority Republican state Senate and House. And there's like something weird about Southern Republicanism that, and I live in the South. I live in Florida. There's something weird. DeSantis obviously doesn't do this. DeSantis is like bull in the china shop. But like there's this Southern silk stocking, good old boy Republicanism that's like very weak, very limp-wristed, and like likes to be patted on the head by left-wingers and Democrats. There's a governor of Mississippi is a great example of this. Tate Reeves. Brian Kemp's a great example of this. They love the pat on the head by the left. They love getting praised by Stacey Abrams. Anyway, the point is that it's weak. It's weaklings like that. And we're purging the party of these kind of weaklings. Brad Raffensperger was one of them. And it's nice to see that Georgia is at the very least taking a swing towards the right. Burt Jones, we'll see if he wins. He's got hundreds of thousands of votes here. Brad Raffensperger in a very, very distant and pathetic third. The runoff also prolongs an already rancorous and expensive primary several weeks. Jackson is a political newcomer who entered the race late but quickly rose in the polls, and Jones, who boasts Trump endorsement, are both courting the same MAGA voter. So it's great. Like you'll get a very hardcore MAGA option in Georgia. That'll be wonderful because we've seen like total and complete weakness from the Georgia GOP. Also, really good news out of Georgia. We won 2 different Supreme Court seats in Georgia, and that's critical. Democrats desperately want to take Georgia. They think they have enough, Section 8 in Georgia, right around Atlanta, to rig the state. That's what they did, of course, in 2020. They were able to successfully rig the state. Now they're counting those Fulton County ballots, and we'll see what happens next. The entire Trump administration saying, including Todd Blanche and Susie Wiles, we've got the data to prove that they stole the state of Georgia, right? Another reason why Raffensperger should not be in office. In Georgia's Republican gubernatorial primary, America First Trump-endorsed candidates, they led in massive landslide. Raffensperger placed 3rd at 15%, so he's toast. There you go. Another W for President Trump, another L for the rhinos, who he just lost his primary in Georgia. Georgia judge has ordered commanding Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to allow poll walkers in his election night bunker. What a creepy dude. This is something, I saw this in my timeline. So apparently he has some special bunker in a central location where the state receives vote totals, verifies them, and uploads them to the reporting system. This bunker, he wasn't going to allow anybody to oversee it. Nobody was allowed inside of his special little bunker that he's going to have walled off from the public. This is how you lose a state. This guy's dirt. This guy's a dirtbag. So he's got to get a judge to come over the top and slam the gavel down on this guy and say your creepy little secret election bunker is not going to be allowed. Judge throws out emergency order seeking access to Georgia Election Operations Center that dirtbag Brad Raffensperger, whose career is over, is now going to run. Fulton County judge ruled the emergency restraining order against Georgia Brad Raffensperger was legally and procedurally void. Fulton County judge has dissolved an emergency court order that briefly required Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to open the state's election night operations center to additional observers. The decision came just hours after a temporary restraining order was initially granted on election day. This is again, if you have to count all your votes in secret, if you need to, we all remember them putting up the paper, right, and the putting up the the boards to stop people from watching the count in Philly, right, in Detroit. If you have to do it all in secret, then you're hiding something. If you're that guilty, you're the criminal. Raffensperger should be prosecuted for the 2020 election. I totally agree with that. Raffensperger will not be missed by Republicans. The Democrats will miss him, though. Good riddance to the corrupt election rigging rhino snake, Brad Raffensperger, who currently getting absolutely crushed. Another massive victory. And it's a victory if Stacey Abrams is shrieking and crying. Here's Stacey Abrams absolutely having a meltdown over how bad things are about to get in Georgia. Again, Democrats have been working on Georgia so hard for so long, and they're about to be cooked, especially if you have a strong Georgia GOP not run by compromised, limp-wristed, silk-stocking, Republican sellout traitor rat snakes like this. Go move to Massachusetts where you belong and switch your party affiliation, okay? Here's Stacey Abrams laying down, melting down. It's a beautiful thing to see.
With these new maps, we know that analysis by Fair Fight and Black Voters Matter show that we could lose 19 to 20 congressional seats, but we could lose up to 191 state legislative seats. And in the South, those state legislators draw city council districts, county commission districts, school board districts, and they draw state legislative lines. And so if you want to know if your child is going to have fair and equitable access to education, that will be diminished if your families can't participate in elections and elect leaders who value your education. If you want health care in the South, it's the state legislature that decides whether you have access. All of the things that disproportionately harm communities of color will now be decided by people who disproportionately dislike and vote against the needs of people of color.